Hi, I'm Hanlin, and today I'm going to give a talk on a corpus of biology analogy questions as a challenge for Explainable AI on behalf of my other authors who can make it here today, Justin, Sajna, and Vinay. So to start off with, we formulate the analogy question in this format, in which A is to B as C is to what. And this format is probably familiar to a lot of you, especially in this example of man is to king as woman is to queen, especially in this realm of word embeddings. And so you might be wondering then, isn't it this analogy problem already solved? And the answer is no. And this is because, especially in more domain-specific contexts, analogies are actually quite hard to generate, and for us, this context is biology. And also, when it comes to more multi-word phrases, word embeddings themselves don't capture that really well. And also, in terms of interpretability and generalizability, there's also a lot of work and open research to be done in that area as well. So for our case, in terms of our motivation for tackling analogy, apart from technical drive, is also we believe that analogy is a useful learning tool for students in discovering relations, especially in science, and specifically in biology in our case. And so here I have a little demo to give a little bit of context in terms of the data and the problem we're dealing with. So here we have this live biology textbook, which is primarily the source of our data and the concepts and analogies that we work with. And here we can, this is an intelligent textbook in that people can go around, click on different concepts, then check out the text, and then also potentially click on the term itself, which will then give you the definition, and you can click more to get more information about this term and so on. And so for our case, we don't want to just deal with definition of terms, but really looking into the relationships and the relations between each of the terms A is to B and also how C is to D is then related. And so the students can get a better understanding of different concepts. And so in terms of the more related work that has been done, as I mentioned before, one is with word embeddings, and also on the analogy relations itself, there was a SAM-EVOL 2012 test, which was used to measure degrees of relational similarity. And what I mean by that is, suppose given A is to B, there's one relation, and then C is to D, which also has some relation. How similar is the relation A to B as C is to D? And the other tools that people have used in this analogy space is also something called pair pattern matrices by Peter Turney and Patrick Pantel, in which the pairs are basically these terms, and the patterns are basically the can be some sort of pattern between these two words to capture the relation. And also, we have been seeing a rise in deep learning models in the field NLP that have done surprisingly well these years. So we're also seeing some approaches in this space that have been done around deep learning. And I'll talk more about these approaches um, as we go on in this talk. And regarding for the two approaches that we took in this analogy space, one is based on a knowledge base, which was kind of the drive behind the intelligent biology textbook that I showed previously, which is highly manual but highly accurate, which we consider as our oracle. Yes, through this knowledge base, we can extract some analogies. And the other approach is on automating this analogy generation process, but it's also less accurate. And we do this through some of the related work from before with embedding sequence to sequence and sequence to back models, which I will dive a little bit into later. So first talking about the biology knowledge base. Basically, for this, it's a large hand-curated knowledge base by domain experts, such as biologists, um, for this field. And to generate analogies, what this requires is to crawl through the knowledge base to get different semantic relations. And those different semantic relations include things like subclass of, has part, has region, and so on. And the one good thing about taking this approach is it allows interpretability of not only just a direct relationship, but also if there are multiple relationships along the way, which we call multi-hop. So for instance, if A is a subclass of B and B has region C, we can still find a nuanced relation in terms of seeing how A is related to C. So diving into that, I would like to give some examples. And first is with the analogy examples on the different relations, subclass of has part, has region, and so on. For instance, for subclass of one, for analogy question can be phospholipid is to lipid as margarine is to what, and the answer would be fat in this case. And then diving more into interpretability as well. Here, suppose the question is granular is to thylakoid as photosystem 1 is to what, then we see both have has element um, relation to it, but it also gives you a little bit more information on each of these terms as we kind of see before. Um, and furthermore, we could also kind of see relations where there may be a multi um, part process to it. In this case, granulum, cellular structure, and thylakoid, and then also for photosystem 1, photosystem, and photosystem 2, and how they all relate to each other. And now diving a little more into automated generation of analogies. Basically, the way we approach is first just to word embeddings approach, kind of just addition A plus B minus C to generate D. Approach with GLOVE, fast text, which are character-based embeddings, and Elmo and BERT as well. And then also feeding them into sequence to sequence and sequence to vec models. And what I mean by those sequence to sequence and sequence to vec is that for sequence to sequence, what we did with encoder decoder format is each block here shown is LSTM cell, and the encoder is basically a bidirectional LSTM. And for sequence to vec, the encoder part stays the same, but then we have a linear and softmax over the whole vocabulary of analogies. And so diving into the results that we get from the sequence to sequence part, just to show a couple of examples. For the correct example, we have this hydrophobic amino acid is to hydrogen atom, is a polymer, as polymer is to monomer. We see both have this has part relation, and our model predicted correctly. But what's more interesting, I guess, is probably more error analysis part, where protopump is to kinetic energy as basic amino acid is to single bond. And this is a possessive relation. And we see our model predicts kinetic energy, which is quite interesting because now for A is to B as C is to D, we see B and D have the same values. And diving a little deeper into that, we realize the reason is basically because with this given example, lactic acid is to organic molecule, as ligase is to organic molecule. Both have it's perfectly valid to both have kind of the same relation, and that's pretty much the reason why we were getting some of these results for that. And so on a more general scale of the results here, I primarily focus on the deep learning model results, which are more generalizable, and I can talk a little bit more about the word embeddings approach if people are interested as well. But primarily for sequence to sequence and sequence to vec, we see that the models did uh, pretty well. And here for the metrics, the top 1 to 4 accuracy, what that means is basically the top n probabilities that our model assigns to, the words that correspond to the top n probabilities if they show up in the ground truth. Um, so that's pretty much evaluating any, and the reason we have any match accuracy is because sometimes there can be multiple D's in A is to B as C is to D. That is correct. So we have that metric as well, and blue scored just to measure the results. And surprisingly, we found that sequence to sequence is doing on par with Elmo and Bird as well. Bird and BioBird surprisingly did a little worse, which might be due to some overfitting. And so then now diving into more of the conclusion and future work, we realize the knowledge base is very useful in terms of interpretability. It also allows you to generate questions and do a lot of other cool stuffs, but at the same time, it's super manual. And so, which is why we took this other approach of automated interpretability of analogies, But at the same time, we lose a bit of interpretability on that. One way we were thinking of approaching that aspect is potentially to relation extraction, maybe extracting relations such as subclass of and so on, to get a little bit of that information. But this is, again, we feel like it's open to research, and we would like your feedback on how we can best improve or any questions that you have. Thank you.